The morning sun streamed through the airport windows as Andre Phillips made his way to gate B-17. He adjusted his backpack, feeling the weight of his laptop and textbooks after a grueling week of final exams. His gray hoodie and worn jeans were comfortable for the long journey home, though they stood in stark contrast to the crisp business suits that filled the first-class waiting area. Andre checked his boarding pass one more time on his phone. Seat 3A, first class. A small smile touched his lips as he thought about his father's insistence on making sure he traveled comfortably, especially after exam season. "Your brain needs rest, son," his dad had told him over the phone 3 days ago. "I'm booking you first class, no arguments." The flight attendants at the counter wore the signature blue and gold uniforms of Skyway Airlines. One of them, a woman with pinned-back blonde hair, glanced up as Andre approached, and her smile flickered for just a moment before returning. "Good morning," Andre said, holding up his phone to display his boarding pass QR code. The attendant, whose name tag read Diane, squinted at his phone. "Good morning, you're boarding first class today?" Her tone lifted at the end, making it more question than statement. "Yes, seat 3A, Andre replied politely. Diane scanned his boarding pass, then looked him up and down. "May I see some ID as well, please?" Andre noticed the businessman ahead of him hadn't been asked for identification. Still, he pulled out his driver's license without comment and handed it over. Diane studied it longer than seemed necessary, glancing between his face and the ID multiple times. "And this flight was booked by?" "My father," Andre answered, fatigue evident in his voice. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" "No, no problem," Diane said quickly, though her expression suggested otherwise. "It's just procedure. We need to verify all first-class passengers." She finally handed back his ID. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Phillips." As Andre walked down the jet bridge, he couldn't help but notice he was the only person who'd been asked to show identification after his boarding pass was scanned. He shook off the feeling. Maybe she was just being thorough. The interior of the airplane gleamed with luxury. Soft leather seats reclined generously, each with its own charging station and entertainment system. Andre found 3A quickly, a window seat with extra legroom. He stored his backpack in the overhead compartment and settled in, looking forward to catching up on sleep during the 4-hour flight. A flight attendant named Richard approached as Andre buckled his seatbelt. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice carrying across several rows. "This is the first-class cabin. Your boarding pass?" His tone was different from how he'd greeted the older white couple who had boarded just before Andre. "I'm in the right seat," Andre replied calmly, showing his boarding pass on his phone. "Seat 3A. Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. And you're the original ticket holder? This wasn't upgraded at the gate?" Andre felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he got whenever he entered high-end stores or exclusive spaces. "The ticket was purchased by my father as a first-class fare, not an upgrade." "Very good, sir," Richard said, though his voice lacked conviction. He moved on, but Andre noticed him whispering to another flight attendant, both glancing back in his direction. More passengers filed in. Business people in tailored suits, a few older couples in vacation attire, all settling into the luxurious cabin. No one else was questioned about their seating assignment. Andre pulled out his phone and texted his roommate. "Guess who's getting the 'are you sure you belong here' treatment again?" His roommate replied almost immediately. "Bro, show them your dad's company card and watch their faces." Andre smiled but shook his head. His father had always taught him to handle these situations with dignity. "Never let them see they've bothered you," he'd say. "Your presence in these spaces isn't a mistake, and you don't need to prove anything to anyone." A third flight attendant approached, this one carrying a tablet. Her name tag read Valerie. She had a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, sir. I just need to verify some information about your ticket," she said, her voice pleasant but her eyes scrutinizing. "We have some confusion about the booking." By now, several nearby passengers were watching the interaction. Andre kept his voice steady. "There shouldn't be any confusion. The ticket was purchased directly through your airline by my father." And what's the name on the purchasing credit card? Valerie asked. Andre blinked in surprise. I don't think that's information you need to verify my seating, but it's William Phillips. He didn't add that it was the corporate card of Phillips Global Investments, which owned a controlling interest in Skyway's parent company. His father had always encouraged him to stand on his own feet. Valerie tapped on her tablet. I don't see that information here. Let me double-check with the gate agent. Is there a problem? Asked an older man across the aisle, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting authority. You've checked this young man's credentials 3 times now. I don't recall being asked for anything beyond my boarding pass. Valerie's smile tightened further. Just routine, sir. We need to ensure everyone is in their assigned seat. Funny, the man replied, how this routine seems to only apply to certain passengers. Andre appreciated the support but felt increasingly uncomfortable as the center of attention. All he had wanted was a quiet trip home after finals. Valerie left briefly and returned with Richard. They conferred in hushed tones at the front of the cabin, occasionally looking in Andre's direction. A woman in a business suit took the aisle seat in Andre's row. She smiled warmly at him. First time in first class? She asked. No, Andre replied. My dad travels a lot for business. Sometimes I join him. Lucky you, she said. I'm Dr. Thompson, by the way, heading to a medical conference. Andre Phillips, heading home after finals. College student? What are you studying? Business administration and finance. Final year. Their conversation was interrupted when Richard returned with a glass of water. Complimentary beverage before takeoff, sir? His tone had shifted to something excessively polite, clearly aware of the earlier scrutiny from other passengers. Thank you, Andre said, accepting the water. The plane finished boarding, and the economy passengers filed past the first-class cabin to their seats. Andre noticed several flight attendants continuing to glance his way. He put in his earbuds, queued up a playlist of calm study music, and tried to relax. Just before the doors closed, a flight attendant he hadn't seen before, older, with graying hair and a senior crew pin, walked directly to his seat. Excuse me, sir, she said, loud enough to be heard over his music. Andre removed an earbud. I'm the head flight attendant on this journey. I understand there was some confusion about your seating arrangement. Andre took a deep breath. There's no confusion on my part. I have a valid first-class ticket for seat 3A, which I've shown to 3 different crew members now. The head flight attendant nodded. Yes, I see that. However, I wanted to let you know that if you'd be more comfortable, we do have some economy, plus seats available where you might have more space to spread out. Dr. Thompson beside him made a small noise of disbelief. I'm quite comfortable here, thank you, Andre replied, his voice level despite the implication. The seat I paid for is perfectly suitable. Very well, the head attendant said. Enjoy your flight. She walked away, but not before giving a meaningful glance to Richard and Valerie. As the safety demonstration began, Andre felt his phone buzz with a text from his father. Landed safely in Chicago. Looking forward to seeing you tonight, son. Let me know when you take off. Andre typed back. About to take off now. See you soon. By the way, might have some feedback about Skyway's first-class service. The plane began to taxi and Andre stared out the window at the runway. He wasn't going to let this ruin his trip home. Tomorrow he'd be helping his father review quarterly reports for the airline division, including customer service metrics. Perhaps these flight attendants didn't know who he was, but they were certainly going to learn something about treating all passengers with respect. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the clear blue sky. Andre closed his eyes, trying to focus on the journey ahead, rather than the uncomfortable welcome behind. His father always said that true change happened not through confrontation, but through education. This flight was about to become a learning opportunity for everyone involved. The seatbelt sign dinged off as the plane reached cruising altitude. Andre adjusted his seat slightly and pulled out a dog-eared paperback, a biography of his father's business hero, a self-made entrepreneur who had built an empire from nothing. He hoped the reading might distract him from the uncomfortable boarding experience. "Good book?" asked Dr. Thompson from the seat beside him, nodding at his choice of literature. "One of my favorites," Andre replied, grateful for the friendly conversation. "My dad gave it to me when I started business school. Said it taught him more than his MBA did." "Your father sounds like a wise man," she said with a genuine smile. "My daughter just started college this year, pre-med. I keep telling her to find mentors outside the classroom." Andre was about to respond when Richard, the flight attendant who had questioned his seating earlier, appeared with the beverage cart. His demeanor had changed, now overly attentive, his smile plastered on too firmly. "What can I get for you today?" Richard asked Dr. Thompson first, his tone warm and natural. "Sparkling water with lime, please," she replied. Richard carefully prepared her drink and handed it to her with a cocktail napkin. Then he turned to Andre, his smile noticeably different. "And for you, Gona, sir?" The slight pause was barely perceptible, but Andre caught it. "Apple juice, no ice, please," Andre said simply. Richard's eyebrows raised slightly. "Apple juice? Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something more sophisticated? We have an excellent selection of wines and spirits in first class." Andre felt his jaw tighten. The implication was clear, that he didn't know what to order in first class. That apple juice was somehow a childish choice. "Apple juice is perfect." "Thank you," Andre replied evenly. Dr. Thompson glanced sideways at him, then back at Richard. "I'll have what he's having instead," she said suddenly, handing back her sparkling water. "Apple juice sounds refreshing." Richard's smile faltered for a moment before he recovered. "2 apple juices, coming right up." As Richard busied himself with their drinks, Dr. Thompson leaned toward Andre. "Is it my imagination, or are they treating you differently?" Andre shrugged slightly. "Let's just say I'm used to it." "Well, it's completely unacceptable," she said firmly. "I fly this route twice a month, and I've never seen them interrogate any other passenger about their seating assignment." Andre appreciated her support but didn't want to make a scene. "It's all right. I'm just trying to get home without any drama." Richard returned with their drinks, placing them carefully on their tray tables. "Will you be joining us for the lunch service? We have grilled salmon or beef tenderloin today." "Beef for me," Dr. Thompson said. "I'll have the salmon," Andre added. Richard nodded and moved on, but Andre noticed him whispering something to Valerie at the front of the cabin. She looked back at Andre with an expression he couldn't quite read, concern mixed with something else. Andre tried to return to his book, but found it hard to concentrate. He glanced around the cabin, noticing how differently the flight attendants interacted with the other first-class passengers. Warm smiles, casual conversation, genuine laughter. With him, every interaction felt forced and suspicious. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. "How's the flight going?" "The new first-class service should be excellent. We just upgraded the menu last month." Andre hesitated before typing back. "Service is interesting. Tell you more when I land." The head flight attendant, who had suggested Andre might be more comfortable in economy plus, appeared beside his seat. Her name tag read Patricia. "Mr. Phillips, I wanted to apologize if there was any confusion earlier," she said, though her tone lacked sincerity. "We've had issues with seat assignments recently. You understand we need to be thorough." "Of course," Andre replied, though they both knew there had been no confusion about his seat. "If I may ask," Patricia continued, lowering her voice, "how did you come to be flying first class today?" Andre could feel Dr. Thompson tense beside him, clearly listening. "My father purchased the ticket for me," Andre explained for what felt like the 5th time. "I'm traveling home after finals." "I see," Patricia said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And your father flies with us often?" "You could say that," Andre replied, thinking about how his father's investment company had acquired a controlling stake in Skyway's parent corporation 3 years ago. His dad had turned the failing airline around, though he preferred to operate behind the scenes, letting the public-facing executives take the credit. "Well, we're delighted to have you with us today," Patricia said, though everything in her demeanor suggested otherwise. "If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." As she walked away, Dr. Thompson shook her head in disbelief. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "Did she just ask you to justify how you could afford a first-class ticket?" More or less, Andre sighed. He was used to these microaggressions. The surprise when he drove his father's luxury car, the security guards following him in high-end stores, the hosts at expensive restaurants asking if he was in the right place. The lunch service began, and Andre couldn't help but notice that he was served last, even though he was seated in the third row. The salmon, when it finally arrived, was barely warm. Richard placed it on his tray table without the enjoy your meal he had offered to every other passenger. Andre ate quietly, trying to enjoy the food despite everything. Dr. Thompson engaged him in conversation about his studies, his plans after graduation, his favorite courses. Her warmth was a welcome contrast to the crew's coldness. Halfway through the meal, Andre noticed Valerie and Patricia huddled together near the galley, looking at a tablet and then over at him. Patricia's eyes widened at whatever she was seeing on the screen. Andre wondered if they were finally realizing who he might be. His father had always kept a low profile, preferring to let his business achievements speak for themselves. There weren't many photos of William Phillips online. He avoided publicity and rarely attended public events. But anyone who did a thorough search of Skyway's corporate structure would eventually find his name at the top of the organization chart. After the meal service, Andre visited the restroom. On his way back to his seat, he overheard Patricia speaking to another crew member in hushed tones. Checked the manifest again. His ticket was purchased with a corporate card. Phillips Global Investments. Does that mean anything to you? The other crew member shrugged. Never heard of it. Probably some small business trying to look important. Andre walked past without acknowledging that he'd heard them. Phillips Global Investments was anything but small. It managed assets worth billions and owned significant stakes in dozens of major companies, including the very airline they worked for. Back in his seat, Andre found a message on his screen. Flight crew has been notified of possible turbulence ahead. Yet, looking around, no one else seemed to have received the same message. Dr. Thompson noticed his frown. Something wrong? Andre showed her the screen. Seems I'm the only one getting this message. She leaned over to look. How strange. My screen doesn't show any alerts. She glanced toward the flight attendants who were watching them. I don't think we're expecting turbulence. The captain would have announced it. Andre nodded slowly, understanding dawning on him. I think they're trying to tell me to stay in my seat. You can't be serious, Dr. Thompson said, but her expression showed she knew he was right. The rest of the flight continued in much the same way. Richard brought drinks to everyone else in first class, somehow always managing to overlook Andre until he specifically requested service. Valerie kept finding reasons to check his seatbelt or remind him to keep his tray table up during periods when everyone else had theirs down. As the plane began its descent, Andre felt a mix of relief and frustration. He had hoped for a peaceful trip home, not another reminder of the prejudice he faced regularly. His phone buzzed with a new text from his father. Just got to the airport. Can't wait to see you. I'll be waiting right at the gate. Andre smiled, imagining the look on the flight crew's faces when they saw who was waiting for him. His father rarely used his position for personal advantage, but his presence at the gate would speak volumes without a single word being said. Is someone picking you up? Dr. Thompson asked, noticing his smile. My dad, Andre replied. He's eager to hear about my finals. Well, I hope you'll also tell him about the service on this flight, she said firmly. I'm planning to file a complaint myself. This kind of treatment is completely unacceptable. Andre nodded thoughtfully. I think my father will be very interested to hear about it. He's always been passionate about customer service. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, taxiing toward the terminal. As they approached the gate, Patricia came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to O'Hare International Airport. Local time is 2:35 p.m., and the temperature is a pleasant 72 degrees. We'd like to thank you for flying with Skyway Airlines today, where we pride ourselves on treating every passenger with dignity and respect. Andre couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Dr. Thompson caught his eye and shook her head in shared disbelief as the seatbelt sign turned off. Richard appeared one last time. Mr. Phillips, he said, his voice suddenly much more deferential. Patricia asked me to ensure you have everything you need before disembarking. I'm fine, thank you, Andre replied, gathering his backpack. Please let us know if there's anything we can assist you with, Richard insisted. Hovering uncomfortably, Andre wondered what had changed. Had they finally looked up his father? Or was this just a last-minute attempt to undo the damage of their earlier behavior? Either way, he was about to find out. As he prepared to leave the plane, he knew his father would be standing at the gate, probably in deep conversation with the regional director who oversaw all Skyway operations at O'Hare. The crew's realization was coming one way or another. Andre stepped into the jet bridge, ready for the moment of truth. Andre stepped into the jet bridge, adjusting his backpack over his shoulder. Behind him, he could hear the flight crew thanking other passengers with warmth that had been noticeably absent in their interactions with him. Dr. Thompson walked beside him, her rolling briefcase making a steady rhythm against the carpeted floor. "That was something else," she said, shaking her head. "In all my years of flying, I've never seen such blatant discrimination." Andre finished for her when she trailed off. "It happens more than you'd think." Dr. Thompson's face showed genuine concern. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that. And I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." "You did more than most would," Andre replied with a slight smile. The apple juice solidarity was appreciated. They shared a small laugh as they emerged into the terminal. The gate area was crowded with waiting passengers for the next flight, but Andre immediately spotted his father. William Phillips stood slightly apart from the crowd, his tall frame and confident posture making him instantly recognizable despite his simple attire, dark jeans and a navy polo shirt that bore no designer logos, but was clearly expensive to the discerning eye. Unlike many wealthy business owners, William preferred to blend in. "Money shouts, wealth whispers," he often told Andre. It was a lesson in humility that had served them both well. William's face broke into a wide smile when he saw his son. He stepped forward, arms outstretched for a hug, just as the flight crew began to exit the jet bridge. "There's my boy," William called out, his deep voice carrying over the airport noise. "How was the flight?" Andre embraced his father, feeling the tension of the past few hours melt away. "Interesting, to say the least." Dr. Thompson stood to the side, smiling at their reunion. "You must be Andre's father," she said, extending her hand after they separated. "Your son is a credit to you. Handled himself with remarkable grace under some very trying circumstances." William shook her hand, his expression shifting to one of concern as he looked between them. "Trying circumstances? What happened?" Before Andre could answer, Patricia, the head flight attendant, emerged from the jet bridge with Richard and Valerie close behind. Their eyes widened simultaneously as they spotted William Phillips standing with Andre. Patricia clutched her tablet tighter, and Richard's perpetual smile vanished entirely. "Dad, these are some of the flight attendants from today's flight," Andre said, his voice neutral. William's gaze shifted to the crew, his expression unreadable. "I see. And did they provide the excellent service Skyway Airlines promises to all its first-class passengers?" Patricia stepped forward quickly, her professional mask firmly in place. "Mr. Phillips, it's an honor to meet you. I'm Patricia Reynolds, lead flight attendant. I trust your son had a pleasant journey with us today." The disconnect between her current fawning tone and her earlier behavior was so stark that Andre had to suppress a laugh. Dr. Thompson made a small noise of disbelief beside him. "Actually," Dr. Thompson interjected, "your crew subjected this young man to repeated questioning about his right to be in first class, suggested he might be more comfortable in economy, served him last during meal service, and generally treated him with suspicion and disrespect throughout the entire flight." William's expression darkened as he listened, his jaw tightening. The flight crew stood frozen, color draining from their faces as the realization of who they were dealing with became increasingly clear. "Is this true, Andre?" William asked, his voice controlled but edged with anger. Andre nodded. "From the moment I boarded, they checked my boarding pass multiple times, asked how I could afford the ticket, and implied I was in the wrong section." William turned back to Patricia, his gaze steady. "Ms. Reynolds, do you recognize my name?" Patricia swallowed visibly. "Yes, sir. Phillips Global Investments is the majority shareholder of our parent company." "That's right," William said evenly. "But more importantly, I'm Andre's father, and it appears my son was discriminated against on one of my own airlines." By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching the exchange with interest. Richard and Valerie seemed to be trying to make themselves as small as possible. Another man in a suit hurried over, the airport operations manager for Skyway, alerted by text from one of the gate agents who had recognized William. Mr. Phillips. What an unexpected pleasure, the manager said, clearly flustered. Is there something I can assist you with today? Yes, Gregory, William replied, apparently familiar with the manager. I'd like to understand why my son was harassed by your flight crew today. Gregory looked confused, then alarmed as he glanced between William, Andre, and the flight attendants. Harassed? I'm not sure I understand. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private, Patricia suggested, looking uncomfortable with the growing audience. No, I don't think so, William said firmly. My son wasn't afforded the courtesy of privacy when he was publicly questioned and humiliated. I'm curious to hear your explanation right here. Patricia's professional demeanor cracked slightly. There must be some misunderstanding. We were simply following protocol for what? William interrupted. For young black men flying first class? Because I fly this route regularly, and I've never once been asked to justify my presence in first class or been offered a more comfortable seat in economy. An older gentleman who had been on the flight stepped forward from the crowd. I witnessed it too, he said. Completely inappropriate behavior from the crew. I've been a platinum member with Skyway for 15 years, and I was appalled. Several other passengers nodded in agreement, including a couple who had been seated across from Andre. The woman spoke up. They kept checking his seatbelt as if he didn't know how to fasten it. It was embarrassing to watch. Gregory, the operations manager, looked mortified. Mr. Phillips, please allow me to express my deepest apologies. This is absolutely not in line with Skyway's values or training. I assure you we will launch a full investigation immediately. I should hope so, William replied. Then turning to his son, his expression softened. Are you all right, Andre? Andre nodded. Throughout the confrontation, he had remained calm, observing how his father handled the situation with dignity and restraint. There was no shouting, no threats, just the quiet power of accountability. I'm fine, Dad. Nothing I haven't dealt with before. William's face showed a flash of pain at those words. He placed a hand on Andre's shoulder. You shouldn't have to deal with this at all, son. Especially not on an airline that bears our family's investment. Dr. Thompson, who had been watching the exchange, spoke up again. If you need a witness statement for your investigation, I'd be happy to provide one. I observed the entire incident. Thank you, Doctor. William trailed off, extending his hand. Thompson. Elaine Thompson, she replied, shaking his hand. And it's no trouble at all. What happened today shouldn't be swept under the rug. William turned back to Gregory and the flight crew. I want a detailed report on my desk by tomorrow morning. Not just about this incident, but about your current training protocols for bias and customer service. And I'll be sitting in on the next board meeting to discuss changes. Patricia looked as though she might faint. Richard and Valerie stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Of course, Mr. Phillips, Gregory stammered. Right away. As the group dispersed, with Gregory ushering the flight crew away for what would undoubtedly be an uncomfortable conversation, Andre and his father walked toward the baggage claim with Dr. Thompson. I'm sorry you had to experience that, son, William said quietly. I thought things would be different by now. It's not your fault, Dad, Andre replied. And honestly, I'm used to it. That's what bothers me the most, William sighed. You shouldn't be used to being treated differently because of the color of your skin. Dr. Thompson nodded in agreement. Your father's right, Andre. And what makes it worse is that these incidents happen thousands of times a day to young men like you who don't have powerful fathers to hold people accountable. They reached the escalator, leading down to baggage claim, the three of them standing side by side as they descended. So what happens now? Andre asked his father. Will they lose their jobs? William considered the question carefully. What do you think should happen? Andre thought about Patricia, Richard, and Valerie, their biased behavior, but also the look of genuine shock and shame on their faces when they realized their mistake. Firing them won't solve the problem, Andre said finally. It would just make them bitter and reinforce whatever prejudices they already have. William nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. I agree. Real change doesn't come from punishment alone. What they need is education, Dr. Thompson suggested, and maybe some first-hand experience of how it feels to be judged unfairly. As they reached the bottom of the escalator, William's phone buzzed with messages, likely updates from Gregory about the situation. But he ignored them, focusing instead on his son. I have an idea, William said, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Something that might turn this unfortunate incident into an opportunity for real change. But first, let's get your luggage and head home. Your mother's making your favorite dinner and she'll have my head if we're late. Andre smiled, grateful for his father's perspective and approach. As they walked toward the baggage carousel, several people glanced their way, having witnessed the confrontation upstairs. A few nodded respectfully to William, recognizing him as someone important. Dr. Thompson prepared to say her goodbyes. It was a pleasure meeting you, Andre, despite the circumstances. I hope our paths cross again under better conditions. Thank you for speaking up, Andre said sincerely. That's what allies are supposed to do, she replied with a warm smile. Not just feel bad about injustice, but stand against it when we see it. As they parted ways, Andre felt a complex mix of emotions, lingering frustration from the flight, but also hope for what might come next. His father wasn't just going to let this incident fade away. Knowing William Phillips, something significant was about to change at Skyway Airlines, and whatever his father had in mind, Andre knew it wouldn't just be about punishing those flight attendants. It would be about creating lasting change that would affect many more lives than just his own. 1 week had passed since the incident on the plane. Andre sat in his father's home office reviewing the detailed report that Gregory, the airport operations manager, had sent over. The thick document contained interviews with passengers, statements from the flight crew, and a thorough analysis of Skyway Airlines' current training procedures. What do you think? William asked, watching his son from behind his desk. Morning light streamed through the large windows, illuminating the space that had always felt like the command center of their family's business empire. Andre flipped to Patricia's statement, reading her words carefully. She claims she was just following protocol, but can't explain why I was the only passenger questioned multiple times. He set the report down. At least she's not denying what happened. William nodded, leaning back in his chair. Richard and Valerie's statements are more interesting. They both admit to treating you differently, though they insist it wasn't conscious bias. It rarely is, Andre replied, thinking of the countless lectures and readings on unconscious bias he'd studied in his business ethics class. People don't wake up planning to discriminate. They just make 1,000 tiny decisions based on assumptions they don't even realize they hold. William smiled at his son's insight. Exactly, which is why simply firing them wouldn't solve the real problem. The door to the office opened and William's assistant, Tanya, entered with a tablet in hand. They're all here, Mr. Phillips, waiting in the main conference room as requested. Thank you, Tanya. We'll be right there. William stood, straightening his tie. Unlike at the airport, today he was dressed in full business attire, a sharp charcoal suit that conveyed his position as CEO. Ready for this? He asked Andre. Andre nodded, adjusting his own tie. His father had suggested he wear a suit too, explaining that sometimes the right clothing was armor, establishing authority before you even spoke a word. They walked together through the executive floor of Phillips Global Investments. Employees nodded respectfully as they passed. Andre had grown up visiting this office, but today felt different. Today he wasn't just the boss's son, he was part of something bigger. William paused outside the conference room door. Remember, this isn't about revenge or public shaming. It's about creating meaningful change. I know, Dad, Andre said with a smile. I've been listening to your business philosophy my whole life. William laughed and clapped his son on the shoulder. And here I thought you were just humoring your old man. He pushed open the door. The large conference room fell silent as they entered. Seated around the polished table were Patricia, Richard, and Valerie, the flight crew from the infamous flight, along with Gregory, the operations manager, the head of HR for Skyway Airlines, and several board members. Dr. Thompson was there too, having accepted William's invitation to participate. Good morning, William said, his voice commanding respect without raising in volume. Thank you all for coming. I believe most of you know my son, Andre. All eyes turned to Andre with varying degrees of discomfort. Patricia couldn't quite meet his gaze, while Richard looked like he might be ill. Valerie at least offered a small nod of acknowledgement. I've reviewed the report about last week's incident, William continued, taking his seat at the head of the table, and I've come to several conclusions that I'd like to share with you today. The tension in the room was palpable. Andre took his seat next to his father, feeling the weight of everyone's attention. First, William began, I want to make it clear that discrimination of any kind is unacceptable at any company bearing the Phillips name. What happened to my son was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much larger problem that exists throughout our industry and society. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. However, William continued, I don't believe that firing employees who display unconscious bias is the solution. That would be treating the symptom, not the cause. Patricia's head snapped up, surprise evident on her face. Clearly she had been expecting termination. Instead, William said, I'm announcing several changes that will be implemented immediately. He nodded to Tanya, who began distributing folders to everyone present. First, we're establishing a new department within Skyway, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This department will report directly to me until we can hire a qualified chief diversity officer. The board members exchanged glances. This was a significant organizational change being announced without prior discussion. Second, William continued, we're overhauling our training programs. Every employee, from baggage handlers to board members, will participate in comprehensive bias training. Not just once, but as an ongoing part of professional development. Andre watched the reactions around the table. The HR director was nodding enthusiastically, while some of the board members looked more reserved. Third, William said, we're creating a new scholarship program for minorities interested in careers in aviation. The Phillips Aviation Scholarship will cover full tuition, provide mentorship, and guarantee internship opportunities within our company. Dr. Thompson was smiling now, clearly approving of William's approach. Gregory was taking detailed notes. Finally, William said, his voice softening slightly, I'd like to address Patricia, Richard, and Valerie directly. The three flight attendants tensed visibly. What you did was wrong, William stated plainly. You allowed unconscious bias to affect how you treated a passenger, and that's unacceptable. However, I also believe in second chances and learning opportunities. He paused, making eye contact with each of them. Therefore, I'm not terminating your employment. Instead, you'll be the first participants in our new training program, and afterward, you'll help design and deliver that training to other employees. Your first-hand experience with recognizing and acknowledging bias will be valuable to others. Patricia's eyes widened. You want us to teach others? Yes, William confirmed. Sometimes the best teachers are those who have made mistakes and learned from them. You'll work directly with our new diversity team to develop training modules based on real-world scenarios, including what happened to Andre. Richard looked stunned. Sir, I don't know what to say. This is not what I expected. It's not about what you say now. Andre spoke up for the first time. It's about what you do going forward. All eyes turned to him. Andre met their gazes steadily. I'm graduating with my MBA next month, he continued, and I'll be joining the company as the interim head of this new department until we find the right candidate for the permanent position. This was news even to some of the board members, who looked to William for confirmation. He nodded, pride evident in his expression. Andre has been studying business ethics and organizational behavior, William explained. His perspective as both a business professional and someone who has experienced discrimination firsthand will be invaluable. Dr. Thompson spoke up. If I may, I think this is an excellent approach. Research shows that punitive measures alone rarely change deep-seated behaviors. Education, accountability, and systematic change are much more effective. The HR director nodded enthusiastically. I completely agree. And having those who've made mistakes lead the training adds authenticity. People can relate to that in a way they can't relate to theoretical examples. Patricia cleared her throat. Mr. Phillips, both of you, I want to apologize again for my behavior. I've spent the past week thinking about my actions, and I'm truly ashamed. Her voice trembled slightly. I didn't think of myself as someone who would discriminate, but my actions proved otherwise. Recognition is the first step, William acknowledged. But it can't be the only step. Valerie spoke next, her voice quiet but determined. I'd like to be part of this change, truly. What we did was wrong, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Andre studied her face, seeing genuine remorse. That's the goal, he said. Not just to prevent incidents like mine, but to create an environment where everyone feels respected and valued, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. Richard, who had been silent, finally spoke. I keep thinking about how many times I might have done something similar without even realizing it. How many passengers have felt unwelcome because of my unconscious assumptions? He shook his head. I want to do better. William nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of self-reflection we need. Now let's discuss the implementation timeline. The meeting continued for 2 hours, delving into specifics about the new initiatives. Andre contributed ideas based on his studies and experiences, while board members raised questions about budgets and logistics. Throughout it all, Patricia, Richard, and Valerie participated actively, seemingly determined to make amends through meaningful action. As the meeting wound down, Gregory approached Andre while others were gathering their things. I want you to know, he said quietly, that your father's approach today has changed my thinking. I came in expecting a public firing and damage control. Instead, I witnessed real leadership. Andre smiled. That's my dad. He's always seen the bigger picture. And clearly so do you, Gregory replied. The airline will be better for having you on board. As people filed out of the conference room, Dr. Thompson paused to speak with Andre and William. I just wanted to say how impressed I am with how you've handled this situation, she told them. When I stood up for Andre on that flight, I never imagined it would lead to company-wide changes like this. Sometimes the most significant changes come from the most uncomfortable moments, William replied. We just have to be willing to learn from them. Dr. Thompson nodded. My daughter is considering changing her major to business ethics. Would it be possible for her to interview you both for a class project? Your approach to this situation would make an excellent case study. We'd be honored, Andre replied, exchanging a smile with his father. As they walked the doctor out, Andre felt a sense of purpose stronger than he'd ever experienced before. What had begun as an unpleasant incident on a flight was transforming into something meaningful, a catalyst for real change that would affect countless people. His father had always taught him that true leadership wasn't about wielding power, but about using influence to create positive change. Today he had witnessed that philosophy in action, and soon he would be putting it into practice himself. The 3 flight attendants who had treated him so poorly were now going to be part of the solution. It wasn't the ending most would have expected, but Andre knew it was the right one, the one with the potential for lasting impact beyond just a moment of justice. 6 months later, Andre stood at the front of the Skyway Airlines training center, watching as the newest group of flight attendants filed into the room. The space was bright and modern, recently renovated as part of his father's commitment to the new training program. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of planes taking off and landing, a constant reminder of the company's purpose. Good morning, everyone, Andre said once the room had settled. At 23, he was younger than most of the people he was addressing, but the confident set of his shoulders and the clear authority in his voice commanded attention. Welcome to the final day of your orientation training. 40 faces looked back at him expectantly. The group was noticeably diverse, people of various ages, races, and backgrounds. This was no accident. Part of the changes implemented over the past 6 months included a concerted effort to recruit from a wider pool of candidates. Today's session is perhaps the most important one you'll have, Andre continued. We're going to talk about unconscious bias and how it affects the way we treat passengers. A few people shifted in their seats. This topic sometimes made people uncomfortable, but that discomfort was part of the learning process. But rather than just lecture you on theory, we've brought in some people to share their real experiences. Andre gestured toward the door. I'd like to introduce Patricia Reynolds, Richard Chen, and Valerie Washington. The 3 flight attendants entered the room. They looked different from the last time Andre had seen them in the conference room 6 months ago. More confident, but also more humble. Each had gone through intensive training and personal growth during that time. Many of you have met these 3 senior crew members during your training, Andre said. What you don't know is that they have a unique story to share, one that changed the culture of this entire airline. Patricia stepped forward first. Gone was the defensive posture and fake smile. Instead, she stood with genuine poise, meeting the eyes of the trainees directly. 6 months ago, I led a crew that discriminated against a first-class passenger, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. We questioned his right to be there, suggested he might be more comfortable in economy, and provided substandard service, all because he was young, black, and dressed casually. The room was silent, No one had expected this level of honesty on the first introduction. What we didn't know, Patricia continued, was that this passenger was Andre Phillips, the son of our company's majority shareholder. Eyes widened around the room as people made the connection, looking between Patricia and Andre with new understanding. Richard stepped forward next. "I've been a flight attendant for 12 years, he said. And if you had asked me 6 months ago if I was biased, I would have said absolutely not. I thought of myself as fair and professional." He paused, shaking his head. "I was wrong. The way I treated Andre showed biases I didn't even realize I had." Valerie joined them. "We're not here to make excuses for our behavior," she added. "We're here because we want you to learn from our mistakes. We want you to understand how unconscious bias can affect your actions, even when you think you're just following protocol or being careful." Andre watched their presentations with a sense of pride. These three had come so far from the people who had made him feel unwelcome and unwanted on that flight. Their journey hadn't been easy. There had been defensive moments, tears, and difficult conversations, but they had persevered, determined to turn their mistake into a teaching opportunity. As the three flight attendants led the trainees through exercises designed to identify and counter unconscious bias, Andre stepped back, letting them take the lead. This was their expertise now, hard-earned through reflection and dedication. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. "How's the final training going?" Andre typed back, "Incredible. They're naturals. You should see the engagement from the trainees." William's reply came quickly. "Not surprised. Sometimes our biggest mistakes lead to our greatest contributions." Andre smiled at his father's wisdom. It had been William's vision to transform that uncomfortable flight into a company-wide movement. While other CEOs might have simply fired the offending employees and issued a public statement, William had seen an opportunity for deeper, more meaningful change. After lunch, Andre prepared for the next session. This one would be different, a panel discussion featuring passengers who had experienced discrimination while flying. Dr. Thompson had helped arrange the panel, using her extensive network in the medical community to find people willing to share their stories. As he set up the room, the door opened behind him. He turned to find Patricia standing there alone. "Do you have a moment?" she asked. Andre nodded, gesturing to the chairs nearby. "Everything okay with the morning session?" "More than okay," Patricia said as they sat down. "But that's not why I wanted to talk to you." She took a deep breath. "I never properly apologized to you personally. We've been so focused on the training program and the bigger picture that I never just said, human to human, how sorry I am for how I treated you." Andre studied her face, seeing the genuine remorse in her eyes. "That day on the plane," Patricia continued, "I made you feel like you didn't belong, like you were somehow less deserving of respect and dignity than other passengers. There's no excuse for that, and I am truly sorry." Andre nodded slowly. "Thank you. That means a lot. Your father could have easily fired all of us," Patricia said. "Most people in his position would have. Instead, he gave us a chance to be part of the solution. I want you to know that I don't take that lightly." "That's who he is," Andre replied with a small smile. "He's always believed that most people want to do better when they know better." Patricia nodded. "He was right, at least about me." She hesitated, then added, "My daughter is starting college next year. She wants to study business like you did. When I told her about what happened and how you and your father responded, she said it changed how she thinks about leadership." Andre hadn't expected that. "In what way?" "She always thought leadership was about power, making tough decisions, being in charge. But she said what you and your father did showed her that real leadership is about transformation, about seeing potential where others might only see problems." Before Andre could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Thompson and the other panelists. The afternoon session was about to begin. As people took their seats, Andre moved to the front of the room to introduce the panel. Looking out at the faces of the trainees, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than any he had experienced in his business classes or internships. "Over the past 6 months," he began, "Skyway Airlines has undergone significant changes. We've revised our training, established new policies, and created reporting systems to ensure all passengers are treated with dignity and respect. But policies and procedures are just words on paper unless they're brought to life by people who truly care." He gestured to the panelists. Today you'll hear from passengers who have experienced discrimination while flying, not just on Skyway but on airlines across the country. Their stories aren't easy to hear, but they're important. They remind us that behind every policy is a real person with real feelings who deserves to be treated with respect. As the panelists shared their experiences, Andre noticed Patricia, Richard, and Valerie in the audience listening intently. They no longer showed the defensive posture of people who felt attacked, but the open engagement of people eager to learn and grow. After the session concluded, Andre's father arrived to observe the training center in action. William moved through the room, greeting trainees and instructors, taking genuine interest in the program he had set in motion. "What do you think?" Andre asked when they finally had a moment alone. William looked around the training center with satisfaction. "I think we've made a good start. But the real test isn't what happens in this room. It's what happens in the air when passengers of all backgrounds board our planes." Andre nodded in agreement. "We've set up monitoring systems to track customer satisfaction by demographics. Early data shows improvement, but we've got a long way to go. Progress isn't always linear," William reminded him. "There will be setbacks and challenges. The important thing is that we're committed to the journey." As they walked through the facility, they passed a wall that hadn't been there during Andre's last visit. On it were hundreds of sticky notes, handwritten pledges from employees about how they would contribute to a more inclusive environment. Andre stopped to read a few of them. "I will speak up when I see someone being treated unfairly. I will examine my own biases and work to overcome them. I will remember that every passenger has a story I don't know. I will treat others how I would want my family to be treated." The last note caught Andre's eye. It was in Patricia's handwriting. "I will remember that everyone deserves to feel they belong without having to prove it." This was Patricia's idea, William explained, seeing Andre's interest. She wanted everyone to make a personal commitment, not just follow corporate policy. Andre nodded, impressed by how far she had come. "It's working. The whole culture feels different." Later that day, as the training concluded, Andre stood with his father watching the new flight attendants receive their wings, the symbol that they were now official representatives of Skyway Airlines. "You know," William said quietly, "when I first bought shares in this airline, it was just a business decision. I saw a struggling company with potential for turnaround. I never imagined it would become a platform for social change. Sometimes the most meaningful journeys take us to destinations we never planned," Andre replied, echoing one of his father's favorite sayings. William laughed, patting his son's shoulder. "Using my own words against me now, are you? I've taught you too well." As they left the training center together, Andre thought about how a single flight, one uncomfortable experience among thousands in his life, had led to changes that would affect countless passengers for years to come. The incident hadn't been pleasant, but the outcome had created ripples of positive change far beyond what anyone could have predicted. Sometimes, Andre reflected, that's how progress worked. Not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through the patient, persistent work of turning difficult moments into opportunities for growth. And as he looked at the planes taking off through the large windows, each carrying hundreds of passengers of all backgrounds, he felt hopeful that the next young person who boarded in casual clothes would be welcomed with the same respect and dignity as everyone else. Not because their father owned the airline, but because it was simply the right thing to do.